Here are a few animals that make actual zombies in nature. Number 7. What's that on your head? This real-life zombie maker takes us to the jungles where a fungus called, and I hope I'm saying this right, Ophiocordyceps unilateralis terrorizes ants, cockroaches, and butterflies. A fungus that invades bodies. Yep, this exists in nature. But it's the ants who have an especially difficult time dealing with this. This devious fungus has figured out a way to invade ants' bodies and take over their minds. Once an infection is underway, the fungus completely takes over. It effectively stops the ant from controlling its limbs. When the fungus infects an ant, it grows through the insect's body, essentially draining it of nutrients and takes over its mind. The fungus gets the ant to leave the safety of its nest and climb a nearby plant. It stops the ant at around a height of 10 inches, which is the area with the right temperature and humidity for the fungus to grow. It then forces the ant to permanently lock its mandibles around a leaf. Eventually, it sends a long stalk through the ant's head, growing into a bulbous capsule full of its spores. This is great because the ant typically climbs a plant that's close to or overhangs its colony's foraging trails. That way, the fungal spores rain down onto the other ants below, and the process begins again. The worst part? Research has shown that the ant is essentially a prisoner in its own body. Its brain is still fully functioning in the driver's seat, but the fungus is controlling the wheel. Before we go on to the next zombie-making animal, do us a favor and hit that like button right here. Number 6. Let's see. Check out those birds. If it were easier to pronounce, Leocochloridium would make a great subject for a horror film. Not only does it sound ominous, but it's actually a terrifying part of Mother Nature. This parasitic worm is a snail's worst nightmare. Here's how the entire bizarre sequence plays out. The worm invades a snail through its eye stalks. It then proceeds to pulsate the snail's stalks, as crazy as that sounds, making the snail's eyes seem like they're caterpillars. The worm then gets the snail to go out into the open where birds swoop down and pluck out the snail's eyeballs. What? This horrendous process is called aggressive mimicry in nature, and it would kind of be like if an alien invaded one of us, made us disguise ourselves as a zebra, and just walk around towards a pride of lions. Anyways, once inside the bird's digestive system, the worm breeds in its guts. Its eggs are eventually crapped out of the bird and eaten by other snail, which didn't seem to notice that his friends had been acting a bit like zombies lately. Unfortunately, this isn't the worst thing to happen on this list. Number 5. Crab's worst nightmare. Hold on. Barnacles can turn things into zombies too? Well, okay. Apparently, Sacculina is a body-snatching barnacle that takes over crabs. They absorb their nutrition for themselves, impairing the crab's growth, all while using the crab's shell for protection. And, oh yeah, one more thing. They also make these crabs infertile. Sacculina belongs to a class of parasites known as parasitic castrators, which actually isn't as bad than it sounds. Technically, that term just describes any parasite that blocks the reproductive function of its host for their own selfish gain. So, how do these barnacles infest a crab host? The Sacculina larva finds a crab and looks for a joint to literally inject themselves into the crab. The Sacculina grows in the crab and then emerges as a sac on the underside of the crab's rear thorax. Does this sound like aliens yet? I mean, this parasite will take over the crab's intestines, reproductive system, and even the central nervous system so they can control the crab. When a female Sacculina is implanted in a male crab, it'll interfere with the male crab's hormonal balance. This sterilizes the crab and eventually changes the body of the crab to resemble that of a female crab. The female Sacculina then forces the male crab to act like a female crab. They'll get the male crab to perform female mating dances, and the male crab will even develop a nurturing behavior typical of a female crab. Yeah, I'm extremely happy I'm not a male crab right now. If you think these animals are bad, then you definitely will want to watch our video, Animals Who Are Evil Geniuses. Number 4. Another fun guy? Ever wonder how fungus spreads? No? Well, we're going to tell you anyway. Just like pretty much everything else in this video, it's pretty bizarre. The amphibian chytrid fungus is a fungal disease that's been known to take over amphibians. It spreads by taking over the minds of tree frogs and forcing them to work harder in luring potential mates so the fungus can spread. Yep, a frog STD. BD, as it's referred to, usually just kills the frogs it affects. In fact, it's been blamed for the extinction of entire frog species. But one species of tree frogs in Central Asia, Japan, and Korea has adapted to withstand the fungus, with one major caveat. It makes the males much more likely to mate. A recent study found that infected male Japanese tree frogs were much more energetic with their mating call, making them more likely to attract a female mate. This is especially odd since the disease makes the frogs lethargic. However, the male frogs put in much more energy to put it in an increased frequency of higher-pitched mating calls. These mating calls are ones that apparently female frogs just can't resist. Once they get together, the male passes the disease to the female, and she passes it on to her offspring, and presumably they grow up, find a mate, and pass BD on to them. Think there are any Japanese tree frogs out there that didn't mind this fungus? Number 3. Hole on the side. If you're a cricket, the last thing you'd ever want to meet is a horsehair worm, also known as the Gordian worm, which is an homage to Alexander the Great and the legendary Gordian knot, which I guess is what a bunch of horsehair worms looks like. With about 351 species among their ranks, these worms essentially terrify plenty of arthropods around. These guys lay their eggs in a body of water, and their hatched larvae simply lay at the bottom of the water waiting to be eaten by the larvae of other insects. Let's go back to the cricket as an example. Once larvae get inside the cricket, they get into the body cavity and grow in length, oftentimes to at least a foot long. Oh yeah, they'll also somehow make a hole on the side of the cricket in order to look outside. The cricket, unaware that they've got visitors, just goes about doing cricket things. These worms somehow trick the cricket into not chirping anymore, making the cricket less likely to get eaten because that would definitely disrupt the worm's plans. One quick thing about crickets, they aren't awesome at swimming. For one, they haven't evolved to do so. Secondly, they're no match for fish, frogs, or whoever might be looking for a meal. So with that in mind, it's pretty shocking to see crickets dive right into the water on occasion. That's because their brains have been manipulated by the worm. Not surprisingly, this ends the cricket's life, and the worms emerge through that hole I mentioned earlier, looking to mate. Once they achieve that, they're ready to go on to the next life. Yeah. Number 2. You'll do just fine. Most of us have a healthy fear of wasps because they pack a pretty mean sting, but it's not really going to hurt us that bad. As for roaches, it's a completely different story. They should keep their distance from jewel wasps for a very good reason. Turns out, jewel wasps carry a potent chemical that essentially turns cockroaches into their puppets. Female jewel wasps evolved to possess a special chemical compound that they inject into the cockroach's brain, effectively turning them into a zombie. Armed with a powerful neurotoxin, the jewel wasp only takes seconds to take over a roach. The first sting paralyzes the roach, and once the wasp has control, it injects chemicals into the roach's brain to control them. Once the mind control part has been achieved, the cockroach just does what the wasp wants it to. For example, the cockroach will go to great lengths to groom itself for the occasion. After all, it is a dinner party. The wasp will chew off half of each of the roach's antennae. The wasp, which is too small to carry the roach, then leads the victim to the wasp's burrow by pulling one of the roach's antennae in a manner similar to a leash. In the burrow, the wasp will lay an egg on the roach's abdomen. It then barricades the burrow entrance with pebbles and leaves. The roach will simply hang in the burrow, waiting for the wasp's eggs to hatch after about 3 days. Over a period of around 8 days, the wasp larva eats the roach in a way that maximizes the likelihood that the roach will stay alive, at least until the larva enters the pupal stage and forms a cocoon inside the roach's body. Does this sound like a complete nightmare yet? Eventually, the full-grown wasp emerges from the roach's body and begins its adult life. Ugh, what's the worst way to go on in this list? Let us know in the comments section. Number 1. Thanks for the web. And it's a 1-2 combination with wasps here. Who has it worse here, a cockroach or a spider? The larva of a ichneumoniid wasp is a spider's worst nightmare. The wasp lays an egg on the back of an orb weaver spider where the larva hatches. The larva then forces the spider to devote itself to building a safe and sturdy web to serve as a home for the larva's cocoon. The larva controls the spiders by chemically turning on a behavior already in the spider's repertoire, which is the resting web. Spiders build themselves one of these to rest in when they're molting. In both the resting and cocoon webs, the sticky spiraling threads that make the webs of spiders so appealing to prey are gone. Instead, the spokes of the web remain, decorated with fibrous spider silk that reflects ultraviolet light. This is highly useful because it stops certain birds and large insects from flying into the web that can see in ultraviolet spectrum. So, what does the larva do when the cocoon web is done? The larva rewards the spider by eating it. Then it settles down to spin itself a cocoon lodged in a strong spider silk home, where it can transform itself into a wasp. Watch this next video to find out which animals are evil geniuses.